All right, greetings everybody here in the building and on the stream as well. My name is Isaac Andrew Mars, and I am a theoretical physicist of Unity Holodynamics. Today, we're going to get started with this next lecture, talking about how to fully matrix. My talk on Sunday at 11:30 is going to be about the scientific aspects of sovereignty and what we need to know, how we can be safe, how we can be secure in our faith and in our own freedom. But this talk is going to bring awareness to the mental tricks and traps of mainstream society in what I would call this rather unreality. And most of the realities that we experience as source beings, the realities are very magical, they're very fantastic, and this is the least fantastic, the least magical reality, so it's the most backwards in my perspective. So, disclaimer about this talk is that there are some very interesting things that I reveal, especially for those in law enforcement, military, related to any governmental organizations, modern mainstream medicine, and modern psychology. So just be aware that there may be some challenging concepts that come up, but it's only by facing this together that we can graduate these cycles and these lessons. So I go by the Crimson Eagle. For those of you who don't know why I do that, the meaning is because to me, the eagle, well, not just to me, to native cultures, the eagle represents a high form of spirituality, spiritual attainment. It also represents to me the eagle-eye perspective, being able to see the bigger picture and using that bigger picture to affect the greatest good on the all. So for the different pills that we have in regard to how we approach this reality, many of us have seen the movie The Matrix with Keanu Reeves. Well, when Neo is given the opportunity between the red pill or the blue pill represents the matrix. If you take the blue pill, you stay in the matrix. You don't wake up to the truth of reality. So this blue pill, why is it blue? It's because in the patterns within patterns that create this construct of a reality, blue, electric blue specifically, is the color of the masculine energy. And red is the color of the feminine energy, which is unity consciousness. This is awakening to the true potential, the truth of unity that exists within each and every one of us, and finally stepping away from the illusion of separation. There's also the black pill, and the black pill is lesser chosen, but it's for those that have newly awakened and have basically given up, because they're like, well, if the universe is infinite and nothing matters, then what's the point? And they basically just go down the vibrational rabbit hole to the bottom of the vibrational spectrum. And this doesn't help anybody. It doesn't increase anything in society. So be aware of the people that are black-pilled and know that we become more of the people we spend time with. So my book, Unity Theory, I have a fresh set of copies here at this conference this weekend, and they go for $22 love donations. But if you don't feel like spending that abundance on a physical copy, you can always go to my website and get a PDF version for free, because this information, it's not about Isaac. It's not about, trying to steal the spotlight. This is about sharing this information as fast as possible so that we can all come together. We can all lift each other up, encourage each other to get through this dark era that we were born into. This is Dr. Victor Vernon Wolf. He is the father of holodynamics. He and I are an interesting pair together. We fall on the opposite ends of the spectrum in a lot of ways, but he is a very beautiful being and a very powerful, intelligent man. He was instrumental in keeping peace between the United States and Russia during the Cold War. In fact, I would say from what I learned of the interactions he had with them, he single-handedly kept us from going into World War III in the 1990s. He's had multiple assassination attempts on his life, and he lives in the Verde Valley area where I live in Sedona, Arizona. And he's one of my good friends. We have a few differences in opinion on how to approach certain things, but for all intents and purposes, I've let him know. I said, Doc, holodynamics is the future. He's like, I know. And I explained to him, after he told me unity theory is holodynamics. But it was holodynamics that I created in my own human experience without any awareness of his work whatsoever. But it is, unity theory is the left brain version of holodynamics. It is the logic, it is the masculine, it is the linear mindset. How does this all work mechanically? And then holodynamics, tons of verified, documented examples of evidence that prove that this is how reality works. So for the benefit of bringing Dr. Wolf's work to the public at a greater level in the Western world, because he's already known very well in Russia and the Eastern world, I am going to be sharing the work of unity holodynamics. That's where we're taking this. And unity holodynamics is the cutting edge science of the modern age that disqualifies failed theories such as quantum theory, which is a failed theory because it is limited on probability. And in an interesting interaction with Greg Braden in Sedona during a Q&A in one of his conferences, he referred to me as Neo because I made it clear to the whole audience that if consciousness is the base of reality, which is what unity holodynamics, all of the cutting edge science is showing us, then that means probability only exists if, ding, 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 the consciousness experiencing it chooses for it to exist. Which means if we keep saying, oh, it's all probability, we're basically throwing all the energy up in the air and just saying, okay, where it lands, where it lands. Well, what if we flip the script? What if we don't just throw everything in the air and we say, hey, I'm going to put this energy right here, and we start to build a better world by using our logic, heart logic specifically. So he wrote a review of my work, and this is what he said. We were born to be part of the greatest transition in history. This book shares a unique perspective of how the principles of natural science are reflected in your personal life and how that has established productive relationships with others in the world around you. During this unique time of lifting the multidimensional veil, as we are experiencing moving from a state of conditioned slavery into an experience of self-potentialization, this book can serve as a roadmap for others on the path of reuniting with our true family. That is a very intelligent way of saying that unity theory is the red pill of the matrix. Our brothers and sisters that are lost in the sauce and the illusion of Maya, they now finally have a clear, simple, 77-page, easy to read, though abstract, way out of this. So, my predecessor, Albert Einstein, I relate with him a lot, and in my experience of reality, he's visited me on many occasions in spiritual form, and I would never claim that he's visited me in an appearance or a physical form, but he has shown me through vibration that he's working with me. One day, some lady in Sedona said she saw his face appear on me, and it never resonated with me that I was his reincarnation or anything like that, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. And after she saw it twice, I was like, okay, there must be something to this. And I just went to the bathroom and I was washing my hands, and I looked into the mirror and I was looking into my own eyes, and I said, Albert, are you one of my, and before I could even ask spiritual guides, I felt full vibrations through my whole spine and body. So it makes a lot of sense as to why I'm able to gather these insights to reflect them back to the world. So Albert, he said, time and space are not conditions of existence. Time and space is a model for thinking. The only reason for time so that everything doesn't happen at once. And what this means is that when we are considering time and space, they are not how reality actually works. It's just a way to consider our experience of it, if that makes sense. And this is important. Here we have an example of perceived linear time, which would be a simplistic line as a timeline. And one thing you can note about time is it's happening right now, and we consider that we have a linear past. We consider, in this way of thinking, we have a linear future. But interestingly enough, no matter where you're at on this timeline, guess what you're experiencing? Is it the past, the now, or the future? Well, it's the now. It's always the now, which means it's inarguable, irrefutable, all of time happens at once. Boom. So since it all happens at once, time is an illusion. Now this gets a little interesting later on, as I'll describe, because if time is an illusion and time and space are the same thing, then that means space itself is an illusion. And if that's true, then there's nothing happening here. It's just a very convincing illusion of a happening. So how do we break limitation through scientific certainty? How do we know without a doubt that this is how it works, that we can be safe walking forward in this knowledge? Well, one, I'm a living example of it. I mean, I've gone through some crazy experiences in which, unbelievable things happened to me and for me to make sure I was safe and I was able to get out of any situation, no matter how harrowing it may have been. So here we have the infinity mirror proof, and this is what I describe in my book, Unity Theory, as the symmetrical geometric proof that is as inarguable as 3 + 6 = 9. It's basic mathematical geometry. And what we have is we have an observer representing the present moment. And as they stand in the center of this thought experiment, this observer considers, okay, well, I have a collective past. What could represent my collective past? All of the moments that led up to this moment right now. And if time is happening at once, then this collective past must also be happening. So how do we reflect on that? Well, we represent the past as a mirror. And we place that mirror in front of the observer representing the now moment. This makes sense with metaphorical and symbolic logic because in the now moment, you can always move around, it's always in flux. And then with your past, you can't actually reach in and physically change your past. You can't reach into the mirror, but you can look at the mirror and you can see your memories through your mind. Well, then I thought if we're on a timeline and what we see in the universe is tons of symmetry, then the future must be just as symmetrical to the past. So we put another mirror behind the observer representing the present moment. This also makes symbolic sense because we cannot see the future typically. And what I realized when I saw this within my mind's eye, I made the epiphany that the present moment is just infinitely multiplied into the past and into the future. And we're not actually moving around. There is no movement happening. I'm shifting the vibration of my consciousness to all of the different moments that already exist, that is creating the illusion of a movie, of a life. Much like how a train cannot reach the end of its destination unless all the tracks are already laid, a man cannot reach the end of his life unless all the moments already exist. Okay, well, this is spooky, because that means we don't have free will on a single timeline. You're just riding through a movie. But the thing is, I knew we did. I just knew it, so I kept going. I kept taking it as far as I could. And I realized, well, let's think about these different timelines. Here we have timeline X, and this represents, I don't know, a decision to go to a vegan restaurant. And then we have timeline Y, and this is a decision to go to a vegetarian restaurant instead. And this is just one example of how if you have a choice between these two things, then both choices must be possible. They must exist. But then if you account for every decision you make in every single moment of your life, there's more timelines and more timelines. And it eventually gets to the point where the only way it could make sense and retain that geometric symmetry is if there are infinite timelines, meaning that the only way that we can have free will, the linear experience of time, and for all of time to happen at once, the only way that these three things can be simultaneously true is if there are infinite timelines, infinite realities, infinite frames of existence, meaning anything you have ever imagined, everything you have ever seen in any TV show, anime, movie, all of it is just as real as this moment is right now. It is only a matter of shifting our vibration collectively to the specific vibration of that experience, and we can all experience it together. And that's what this science is bringing to the people, a very simple, clear level of clarity for this. And when we take those future and past mirrors and we multiply them infinitely around that center point, we get the infinity mirror sphere. And this is what I would consider, for all intents and purposes, as the face of God. This is Goddess. This is God. This is Source. Because this is a singularity of infinite potential. And that is what we truly are. And not a single scientist, not a single man or woman on this planet can argue against that. So the infinity mirror proves that infinite timelines exist through symmetrical geometric logic. Next, I have the triune model to share with you. So the triune is a trinity. It is a 3-in-1, and it's very deeply related to the Holy Trinity, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, although the way that I interpreted those energies are the Father, the Mother, and the inner child, or the masculine, feminine inner child. And here I'll break down the triune model. Again, this is not my model. This is a universal model that I've noticed throughout many different cultures and architecture, ancient history, and also modern other brothers and sisters have been downloading this, using this insight, sharing it. But this is my specific take on it. And awesome, I do have a laser pointer. So here, at the higher level of the triune model, we have the higher awareness of non-duality. Here is the truth of unity. Here is where we truly exist. That's when I'm truly Isaac. Because in the truth of unity, there is nothing controlling me. Down here, we have the illusion of separation. This is where 99.999% of the planet lives all the time. And in this separation, there is no actual separation. If you look here, the triune model is connected to the all at the top. But the shadow on the left and the light on the right are perceiving separation. And it is that perception that creates the ego trap of the illusion of separation, of duality, light and dark, good and bad. Well, it's very simple. If you believe in terms of good and bad, you've been had. Because that is how they invert us. That's how they get us to be unloving to the beings in this reality that need the most love. Because it's only hurt people that hurt people. And I don't care who you are, you can have your own perspectives, absolutely. Only take what resonates and disregard everything that doesn't, always with me. But when it comes to the truth of how this all works, we can't shy away from this. And I want to be clear, on the left side, we have the shadow, and that's connected to our feminine energy. If you look at any energy on the planet, what's the most oppressed, the most suppressed, abused? It's the feminine energy, not just within the women, but in the men and the children too. And this feminine energy is not bad. It's simply the energy that has been demonized and traumatized to host the parasitic programming of fear itself. And on the other side of things, the masculine energy, it tries to represent the light, but it's truly not good. It's simply the energy that has been conditioned and programmed to feed the parasitic programming of fear. So what that means is you have the shadow, the emotional, intuitive energy, and that shadow energy, the programming of the masculine side, harnesses this emotional parasite energy. And how parasites work, how fear works, is it sends us thought forms that we think are ours. And then it's an advertisement. And then we're like, oh yeah, I'm really upset right now. Or, oh yeah, I really need pizza or some beer. But the thing is, that's not really the case. That's the parasite wanting that. That's the fear wanting you to do something. So if you have a bunch of emotional energy that's hijacked by this fear and then channeled into these programs in your masculine side, then your fear, the shadow, becomes a parasite and the light becomes a slave. Yeah. And the way that I would describe these three energies, I would actually bring in the triad from Rudolf Steiner's work involving the Ahrimanic, Christ, and Lucifer energies. So Lucifer is the light. It is the all infinite good, the almighty, the conquering. But then we have the shadow, and that's Ahriman. And that is the pole to Lucifer. Ahriman is the darkness, it's the slow, it's the leaking, the slippery, slimy, fear, low vibrational energy. And the all, this non-duality, any guesses what that one is? That's the Christ energy. That is Christ consciousness, or what I would call heart consciousness, and unity consciousness. So the all represents the truth of unity, non-duality, and quantum consciousness. This is important too, because in the all, everything simply is. Again, no good or bad. And we achieve harmony through neutrality. My entire life, I had been projecting my light. I was tricked, just like most of us, into the Luciferic energy. And I always tried to do the right thing. I always tried to offer help to people, even when they weren't asking. And then this summer, I had a very deep integration of my shadow. And I realized, wow, I don't have to just keep projecting my energy out to everybody. That's like, it's coming from a wounded place. It's trying to be the hero helping everybody that nobody's asking for that. And in order to really see the other beings in my life, I need to allow them to go through their trials, their tribulations. So after I had this integration of the shadow, I realized, well, I don't need to project my light, and I don't need to reflect the shadow back. What about the absolute middle? And it was like, oh, God, that's exactly what Buddha was talking about. That's the middle way. That's the Christ path, is to be so neutral that you only act when it's within your heart for yourself, for the love of the character that you are, to be true to yourself and act in those situations, and only when people come to you for help. And it's not like you have to say, yes, I will help you every time. It's about being true to yourself first and foremost, showing yourself that unconditional love, and then everyone and everything else. So this is the balance of masculine, feminine, and inner child, and this is the path to our full potential. A crystallization of this energy is my book, Unity Theory. Unity Theory corroborates the truth behind the 12 universal laws, or what we would also call the 7 hermetic principles of the land of Tem, which is pre-Egyptian occult knowledge for thousands of years, which explains very simply to anybody in this modern era, what we think creates our reality. It can be no other way. In an infinite sea of realities, your experience is determined by your chosen vibration. Now, this is something that's really important too, because many of us don't realize in this world of weaponized victimization that we are creating this reality. So everything that we've experienced, even though we forgot that this is what we did and this is how it works, everything we've ever experienced, as dark can get, we all chose it. And if we chose it and we take responsibility for that, what can we do then? Then we can change it, right? So we've gone through this. A good example of the light is Joe Biden. He's doing a great job, being a puppet, being a slave to all these figures and energies that represent the autonomic consciousness. And he's trying to build back better and, save the day. And there's plenty of us that are not asking for anything that he's dishing out. So that's a good example of the toxic hero complex. Then we have the shadow. This is duality. This is separation consciousness. It's also the victim experience. So this is fed by harnessing fear energy. And like I said earlier, our masculinity, those hamster wheel programs, are hijacked to siphon that anger, that jealousy, that envy, whatever low vibration energy it is emotionally, into us repeating self-defeating, sabotaging cycles. So this is the path to perpetual suffering. And it's interestingly enough, the shadow and the light have their own paths, but the suffering is very unique to the shadow, and I'll explain why in a second. This is 11 from Stranger Things. 11, her character is the perfect crystallization of what our women, our feminine energy en masse across the planet has been going through for the past, who knows how long, past 100 years at least, in terms of this level of, abuse, psychic experimentation on children. And this is what's going on behind closed doors in warehouses and underground facilities and underground tunnels. So in regard to the shadow, we're going to talk about governmental systems, because govern means to control and mental means the mind. So it's pretty clear to me what they're trying to do. And you have to be, really, really blind or really, really covering your eyes to ignore this truth. This is a quote by Edward Mandell House, who was an advisor to Woodrow Wilson during 1913 to 1921. This was in December of 1913 that he said this quote. It's rather long, but it's important. Very soon, every American will be required to register their biological property in a national system designed to keep track of the people and that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. By such methodology, we can compel people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat, aka fake, paper currency. Every American will be forced to register or suffer not being able to work and earn a living. They will be our chattel, and we will hold the security interest over them forever by operation of the law merchant or maritime law under the scheme of secured transactions, contracts. Americans, by unknowingly or unwittingly delivering the bills of lading to us, will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent, forever to remain economic slaves through taxation secured by their pledges. They will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value designed to make us a profit, and they will be none the wiser, for not one man in a million could ever figure our plans. And if by accident one or two would figure it out, we have in our arsenal plausible deniability. After all, this is the only logical way to fund government, by floating liens and debt to the registrants in the form of benefits and privileges. This will inevitably reap to us huge profits beyond our wildest expectations and leave every American a contributor or to this fraud which we call social insurance or social security. Without realizing it, every American will insure us for any loss we may incur, and in this manner, every American will unknowingly be our servant, however begrudgingly. The people will become helpless and without any hope for redemption, and we will employ the high office of the president of our dummy corporation to foment this plot against America and the world. So this is the truth. This is the truth since 1913 in this set of timelines. And what that means is everything in mainstream society is backwards. If they tell us that God is a man, what is God? Goddess. Because infinite potential. And God and goddess are reflections of light, just like we are. So goddess is the infinite potential. And the particle is masculine, is God, meaning this moment right now, is it God or goddess? This moment, this one singular moment, would be God. This is the particle. Every infinite moment that is we're not experiencing right now is goddess. And so if you think about it in terms of patterns within patterns, let's look at infants. XX. We are all XX chromosomes until the men shift into XY, meaning that we are all goddess before we are God. I mean, quite literally, all of it's backwards. Okay, this is coming in right now, and this is going to be really interesting, especially for those with a Christian background. Essentially, what Yeshua did when he came to this planet, as amazing of a being he is, let's put this into perspective. He single-handedly, one man, Yeshua himself, our Christ, he single-handedly created one of the most devious religions that enslaved the people. And we could say, oh, no, that wasn't Yeshua, that was all the bad guys. Well, quantum entanglement people, we're all one. So Jesus, the Christ, set the field for who? Lucifer, for Satan. He laid the groundwork for people to be controlled, and we are supposed to look at him as if he's perfect, beyond our perfection? No, that's not how it is. It's all a story, which means everything we've ever been taught about all of this, why even hold on to it anymore? Let's focus here and now. You know, one thing that I want to be clear on as a physicist is, since everything is light, we are all a wave and a particle, which means all of the energies are waves and particles, which means the 144,000 of prophecy is a wave and a particle. There are literally 144,000 beings on this planet, probably in more bodies than 144,000, because time is nonlinear and we can have multiple incarnations at once, parallel. So there are 144,000 souls, and there is an energy, the frequency of the 144,000. And my insights and what has been revealed to me through powerful psychics I know and trust is that if you are not tapped into the frequency of the 144,000, you cannot feel spiritual vibrations. You cannot feel intuition. You cannot feel truth bumps. It is when you tap into that service to other of the 144,000 energy that you experience that. Well, just like the 144,000, the Christ energy, Yeshua, Lucifer, Ariman, all of these beings. Yes?
I can also add in 144,000 is also the number of DNA strands for ascended man. When man is God, as Elohim, like Christ consciousness, it's 144,000 strands of DNA that we grow into.
Beautiful.
You repeat that?
Yeah, our perfect
here, brother.
is 144,000 strands. Where the 14th chromosome turns into a cross instead of a couple units.
So the DNA expands to 144. Yeah.
As God, Elohim, that creator and controller of the angels, is us ascended with 144,000 strands of DNA instead of 2.
Right. So that'll be the indicator when we are at that level. We will see the 144,000 strands. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So I'm going off on a little tangent here, but these energies, we will see these characters coming back. But the thing is, if we get caught up on what characters they were in other stories, we're totally ruining the whole game. We're ruining the whole plan because it's about who we are now. Doesn't matter if you're the reincarnation of Cleopatra or Jesus. What matters is who are you now? Who are you in this moment? If a tragedy were to happen and some horrible thing, what would you do? Would you run and hide? Would you protect others? Would you walk right up to the situation and face it like a lion? This is the key to our true potential, being in the moment, being here now. So in order to liberate all of our energy that's been stuck and leaking for all of our life ever since we were born, what we need to do is we need to come together and face and dismantle the Cesta KV Act of 1666. And all we need to do that is fulfill it. In 1666, this act was created by the Pope in the Vatican, specifically because they had an epidemic. It was not the Black Death of the Black Plague. It was another plague at the time. And because there was so much displacement in Europe, they put out this edict to the world that says, well, we claim dominion over the world. Okay, nobody's gonna say no. Okay, so silence is acceptance. And since we have dominion over the world, we are going to put out this edict that says all beings on this planet, unless they provide proof of life with living witnesses, they are considered dead and or lost at sea. Which means that if you don't have that proof of life, that live life claim that I take people through, it takes only 45 minutes. If you don't have that, that means your all capital name, your straw man, as they call it, is a dead corporation you are contracting with for submitting as a slave your life force energy to power the institutionally parasitic matrix of mainstream society. So the very thing that is causing our suffering, the very thing that is causing our slavery, the very thing that is causing all of the sex trafficking, rape, and war, we are contributing our prime, pure, life, living energy to support it. Just like in the Matrix, when they have Neo plugged in, specifically to a power cord, it's the same thing, except that power is coming from our etheric body. So our physical, so-called being does not see it, but it's still there. So one thing I want to talk about is, what do you think happens to the millions to trillions of dollars worth of energy that they've been siphoning your entire life when you fulfill this contract? Does it just disappear, or does it come back to you? Because that's your energy.
Well, logically speaking, you've turned something off. It starts to, build up. That energy starts to pressurize within you again. So moving on, other ways that the shadow operates is typically we have the toxic hierarchies in which the puppet masters at the top, usually one or maybe two, maybe three at the very max, would have the full picture of what's going on in this dark agenda. And then they have their specialized lieutenants that are pretty powerful, but still beneath the top. And they have an even smaller view of what's going on. And to be honest, from my insights, what I've received from the Alliance, from other spiritualists, is these guys, and most of these guys aren't even on this planet anymore. that it's mainly all of the pawns. And since the pawns were abandoned by the beings that were supposed to protect them and lead them, they're so afraid they're just trying to ruin the game as we shift into the ascension. So that's why they're doing these crazy things that seem like, why would they even do that? That's just helping the light. That's just helping us to awaken more. Well, they're doing everything they can to not do that. But the more that they cling, the more desperate they get. The more desperate they get, the more clingy they get. So it's only going to increase. It's only going to happen faster and faster as linear time goes on. Moving on to military and law enforcement, I'd like to think that I have a pretty valid opinion on this, a valid perspective, considering that this is me regretting my decision to be an Army medic for almost 7 years. And the thing about military and law enforcement is that they have a monopoly on all violence and accountability. You know, how many times you see a police officer zooming way over the speed limit past you, not even lights on. And when it comes to the violence, you know, in my situation that I'm going to be debuting on Sunday, the footage of in which I was unlawfully kidnapped by the Mount Shasta Police Department, the violence thing was really apparent because as the chief of police, Robert Gibson, came to approach me to allegedly arrest me, which he didn't do, he kidnapped me, he said, or I called him out right there. I said, well, I'm only going to comply with you, sir, because of the protection of my life and my body, because you are threatening me with violence in order to make me comply. Do you agree to that? And he said, no, I don't agree, as he's shaking his head all over the place. Like, yes, I do agree, because I am doing that. And then I say right in the video, so you're not going to inflict damage on me? And he immediately starts to kidnap me and put handcuffs on me. And then immediately right after that, what does he do? He authorizes him and his lackeys to do the worst carry imaginable, tweaking my right shoulder out of its socket, causing immense pain. And what does he do? What do? They just keep inflicting that pain onto me as I'm on the ground. Oh, stand up, you're fine, get up. And I'm just there screaming. You know, there's no reason for me to make that stuff up. So it's very interesting how they have this monopoly on violence. You know, he said to me, as soon as he walked up to me, the word no came out of my mouth. And I was like, no, sir. And he's like, don't tell me no. And I'm like, what do you mean don't tell me no? What if I say something to you and you say no, which he did later on. He says no to me in the video. I'm like, what if I were to say, no, you don't tell me no? Where's that going to take us? Well, we're going to get in a fight real quick. So it's getting to the point where we need those of us that are ready to walk the walk of sovereignty to be on these front lines, because without numbers, then it's people like me that are just going to be singled out as everybody watches in terror. And the thing about that experience too is some people, they're like, why are you so dramatic, Isaac? Why are you screaming? Why are you so angry? Why are you shrieking? And I'm like, because I can feel the energy of everybody around me in that scenario. I can feel the hatred and the vitriol of the police officers that feel like they have no power anymore because they have a young man saying, nope, I'm not going to listen to your bullying anymore. And I can feel the people all around me sick to their stomach. I can feel the people that want to act but are holding themselves back. And all of that comes through in this intense anger and passion. And the thing is, if we can channel that, it becomes an ally, becomes a gift. Greater magnification, greater intensity to speak our truth, to get our vibration out there. So with that monopoly, they also very much embody follower consciousness and survival consciousness. So considering how energetics work, the law of attraction is all about vibration. So if you have police officers that are called to these horrific accidents and nightmarish murders night after night, day after day, for years of their life, do you think that their experience is going to be high vibration or low vibration? It's going to be low, which is a perfect design to keep them in survival consciousness, always in fear. And the second that something doesn't go by the book to them, oh my God, You know, there in Utah, in my first successful sovereignty interaction, as soon as I told the officer that I didn't need to give him my license and registration, he whips out his collapsible baton and threatens to break in my window immediately. I mean, it was like a little toddler throwing a tantrum. It was rather intense. But along with that, that follower consciousness, like, they don't even make their own decisions. They have somebody tell them what to do, and they're like, okay, this is what I'm doing. In the video evidence I'm going to show on Sunday, the officers literally tell me, I don't have to do that. I don't have to give you proof of my authority. The proof is coming from my mouth. Oh, okay, so you're just the all-powerful authority of God now, and you can do whatever you want just because you have a badge and a gun? That's not how it works. So we really need to let go of these types of consciousnesses to create a brighter future. And interestingly enough, because of the Sestakavi Act of 1666, the act explicitly states that anybody that has a contract with the act, with the trust, that they are not legally allowed to contract under maritime law, which means every one of us, with every contract we have ever made with any bank, any home, anything, has been fraud. We're all fraudsters. And the biggest fraudsters of the whole planet are those in governmental systems, because they are quite literally creating a whole web of lies just to keep lying through the web of lies, and then everybody on the outside of the web is like, oh yeah, this is all true, right? And we're just looking around like, oh yeah, this is how it works, right? And then everybody just gets passive. And that complacency energy really causes us to just put our heads down and walk forward, look at our phones all the time, and, you know, be in our little boxes and our cubicles, and then we just get lost in the sauce, and then we hate our lives, and we're like, why does this all suck? And it's because we're allowing this. We don't need this fraud anymore. We can be honest with each other. With the justice system, how do you even determine justice on scales if you're blindfolded? You know, some could make the argument, oh, well, she's just using her heart to determine that. And yeah, when we get to that level of humanity, that's what we'll be doing. We'll be like Daredevil, you know, wearing the blindfolds and doing flips off walls and you know, jumping up, you know, 10-story buildings just with a single leap. But here, in our current age, nobody can tell what is just and what is not just on scales with a blindfold on. So we're currently living in the era of guilty until proven innocent because of this blind justice. And what's very interesting is they tell us right out of the bat, in court, no law or fact shall be tried. That means no law or fact shall be used. The second you walk into a courtroom, do you think all those laws apply to you? Because they don't. The second you walk into a courthouse, you are in a foreign vessel in dry dock, which means that you are in foreign enemy territory, that anybody in there is considered an enemy to you under maritime law, and all of the laws of the state that you were just in are out the window. None of those laws matter, none of them mean anything, and the judge and the jury are in boxed areas, and since the courthouse is considered court, which court is truly the paperwork, but although everything is an intention in an imagination universe that we live in, the court itself is considered a document. It's considered that court paper. So when the jury and the judge are in boxes, under maritime law, we have the box rule, the bracket rule, or the italics rule, cursive rule. And anything in those boxes, those brackets, or in cursive, does not exist on the document. So every time a judge signs something in cursive, they're not signing anything. They're just pretending to sign something. And you're believing that it's a real signature, so that you're giving them your money and agreeing to go to jail or prison. But none of us have to do this. And I have 4 out of 4 successful interactions in which, to me, a success is I got away and I wasn't charged with anything. And as long as you walk the walk in courage and faith, knowing that you are scientifically and spiritually protected, you will get out. You will. So maritime law proves that the courts are just make-believe. It's all literal fiction in our reality. And can you believe for decades, for hundreds of years, we've run things on this system? I mean, it's just totally nonsensical. It's the the crazy running the asylum, you know? So a few of my experiences that have happened so far, I won't get into them too much because I think I'm already a little over on time. But, you know, as soon as I had my scientific awakening, I started considering, what do I need to do? What is the best course of action to bring this science to the world? And I thought, well, Elon Musk has all the resources that I could need. He claims to work with geniuses that don't have degrees. I know that if I can just get an audience with him or somebody in his company, that I can get this out to the world, stat. And so I drove over 1,000 miles to Tesla Giga Texas, and I got to the front gate, and 2 security officers were there. I started explaining the situation. I'm here to deliver some science to Mr. Musk. It would totally transform his agenda for his company and help him save lots of money. And they're like, okay, that's all well and good. And then the one security guard asked me, so what's your name? And I say, Isaac Mars. And he goes, you need to leave right now. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And I just got here, I drove 1,000 miles. He's like, you need to leave right now or we're calling the police. And I'm like, okay, well, this is strange. Why are you acting like this? I worked in security for a year on the civilian side before my awakening. And I would never treat people at the gate like this. You know, I would invite them in. All they had to do was put me in a closet with a janitor with a white coat on, just saying, yeah, okay, sure, yeah, this is your information, all right, bye, and I would have left. But there was a reason I had to stay. Because we are all one, Ahriman, Satan, whatever you want to call him, that energy knew that I was destined to go through an experience there. So Ahriman manipulated that being because he was in fear, and reacted in a way which would actually hurt them and help me. So this is how when we integrate our shadow, the shadow is truly always there to assist us. And in that experience, being as brief as possible, things happened in there that were unbelievable. To be quite honest, some of the things I don't share with the public because that's how fantastical reality has been for me since I've started this mission and this journey. But the point that I'm making is that I had to experience and endure some pretty wild things in there. I mean, the way they treat these, I mean, there's nothing else to call them but inmates. The way they treat inmates that aren't even guilty of anything. They treated us like dogs. You know, we were stuck in cells for 23 and a half hours a day for our protection for pandemic reasons. And they never cleaned anything in the communal area. It was nothing about safety. And after a nurse gave me an alleged tuberculosis injection, I ended up for the next 2 days experiencing increased heart rate in the 130s to 150s, which is over twice, almost 3 times my normal. I experienced increased contractility. My heart was like pounding, and my blood vessels vasodilated, and I felt lightheaded, and I'm very weak. And I had a pulsating mass in my abdomen, which anybody that's in the medical industry knows that's a hallmark sign for what is a AAA, an abdominal aortic aneurysm, which is basically a heart attack that's lethal within your abdomen. So they tried to assassinate me. They tried to keep this information from reaching the public. And what I did is I held the Bible to my chest, because that's the only book I had at the time, and I kept sobbing, and I kept sobbing, and I kept transforming karmic energy, and I kept saying to myself, faith unto death, faith unto death. And every time I imagined myself dying, I imagined myself immediately ascending into my angelic form, being able to tear down that door and walk out as a superhuman. And I fervently believe that my intention created that potentiality to be not just a potential. It was the next step in that timeline should I pass away. So that scared them, and for whatever reason, I felt like I was getting drugged again, but I realized as I was fasting on like the 3rd or 4th day, I was feeling a healing happening. And so that poison was leaving me, and I'm like, wow, okay, this is better. My heart's calming down. And there were other crazy experiences, but basically I was interrogated by a physician in there specifically about my physics, and they tried to give me an EKG for an unknown reason. It was really fishy. The nurse lied to me, said it was a perfect read when I was shivering, which creates artifact on the waveform. So there was a lot of really strange stuff that happened in there. But the interesting kicker is that on the day that I was released, I opened up the Bible to a random page and I performed stickiomancy, which is book magic, basically. And I said to the universe, I reveal the truth to myself now. And I opened it up to a random page, put my finger down, and started reading. It was Revelation 2, verse 10. Behold, the devil is about to throw you into prison, and for 10 days you will have trial and tribulation. Be faithful unto death, and you will have the crown of life. And on the 10th day exactly, they opened up the cell door, said I was free to leave. All charges were mysteriously dropped.
Wow. Where was this? I have to interject that.
Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas.
Is where that occurred, and this was spring of 21. Oh no. Technical difficulties? I don't know where our brother Alan went, but I'm just going to...
There was another speaker that he had to meet.
All right, I'm just going to use the...
Ocean Sky, who leaves, you know, that is the invitation.
Bear with me, audience. Got to plug in my PC. Pretty mind-blowing stuff, huh, people?
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah. Good to know.
All right, here we go. We're back in business.
You don't need to reach out.
No, we are good to go. I'm kind of a master of adaptation and improvisation, so. All right, here is a picture of my Utah experience with the gentleman that thought it was appropriate to throw a temper tantrum and whip out his baton and threaten me. That is also included in the footage that I'll be showing, just a small clip on Sunday. Okay, so another experience I had, which I think is later in the slideshow, but I can't remember, is the Chicago incident. And when that comes up, I'll explain it too. But moving on, for the benefit of time, linear time, we have religion. Another, like I said earlier, one of the greatest ways to enslave the people, to keep them stuck in the illusion of Maya. You know, Jesus was a part of that big operation. And from that perspective, would it be so crazy to say that Jesus is an archon? If we are all truly one, right? Which means if we can integrate these wild abstract concepts about our heroes and the way that we have viewed them in the past, and we get to the point where that dark aspect no longer freaks us out, then nothing will freak us out. We'll see the most magnificent beings in their light and their darkness, and we'll integrate both. And that is how we ride that middle line between yin and yang. Okay. So in regard to Catholicism, an interesting thing to note about the etymology of Catholic is if you separate the word into cat and holic, cat means low, and holic is addiction. So it's an addiction to being low vibrational. And this man right here, the Pope, most people don't realize this, but if you look at the design of his speaking hall, it is the exact shape of a snake. And on both sides, you can see the snake eyes, and then you can see the snake's fangs in the center of the pulpit where the Pope literally speaks as the mouthpiece of the serpent. So it's very much clear in our reality that there's some darkness going on in these organizations. I mean, look at this alleged beautiful sculpture of Yeshua surviving a nuclear apocalypse is what they claim. Well, that looks pretty demonic to me, and I'm pretty sure it's made out of bronze, which is an alloy, I believe, involving copper, which conducts spiritual energy. So note that symmetry and symmetrical systems, they are high vibration. Does all that spatter and randomness look high vibration to you? It's pretty asymmetrical. I keep missing that. There we go. Then we have educational programming, history, his story. In these systems, our submission is incentivized. Don't talk back to me, just listen. Just absorb the programming that I'm trying to force into your mind. And that programming is typically misinformation, taught as if it were objective truth, as if it's even possible to have objective truth. I can explain to you right now, in a minute and a half, how there's no such thing as objective truth at this human reality. It's very simple. There is 4 lights These 4 lights are set up in the position of a plus sign. And in every direction, all 4 directions, there's an observer, a significant distance away. Doesn't matter what the distance is, because it all has to do with light speed. But it's a significant enough distance that the observer can perceive differences in the lights as they're turned on. So you have a 5th observer who presses a button. And when they press that button, all 4 lights turn on at the exact same time. But equidistantly, meaning all 4 observers in the distance, they're all the same distance away from those 4 lights, every observer correctly claims that their light turned on first. Why? Because the other lights literally took more time to reach that observer because of light speed, which means, boom, there is no such thing as objectivity in the human experience, which means if you're judging somebody because you think that you have an absolute answer and that you think you're right and they're wrong, chances are you're just judging them. And we don't need to do that, because what we are, what we digest, and what we judge are the primary energies we use to manifest. So what we're judging will continuously appear to us. What does this mean for the young men, women, and children of sex trafficking? This means every time we judge a rapist, we are making sure they get raped. Can you see that? Can you feel that? Every time we think that we're being better than somebody else, we are hurting our planet. We are hurting our children. And it's only by bringing this awareness to the people and embodying it as leaders by example that we can experience the shift needed to actually liberate the children and enter those infinite timelines. So in my upbringing, I used to butt heads with plenty of teachers. I was always a rebel in a way. With all this information that's omitted in the way they handled things in these educational systems, I had to call them out. And every time I did, that critical thinking was punished. I was the kid in detention all the time. I was the kid that the principal was talking about on the morning news, and she didn't even know who I was, but she was like, "We got kids jumping out of buildings and holding on to the backs of buses with skateboards. This is crazy." And I'm like, oh my God, that's me that she's talking about. A little fun thing to throw in there. Then we have limitation science. So limitation science is really mainstream science and math. It perpetuates the illusion of separation by trying to break things down through materialist reductionism into the smallest parts, claiming that, oh, it's just like an engine, it's just like a car. We're robots, we're machines. And what this creates is a red herring religiosity, where if you have anything that goes against the main agenda or what the mainstream scientists are saying, well, you're a crazy guy, you're a heretic, you're a lunatic. But the thing is, that's just so that they can keep remanifesting that same cycle of limitation science. Limitation, limitation, limitation. Oh, you can't fly, you can't walk through walls. Well, if I believe that, then through the 7 Hermetic laws and unity holodynamics, that's what I will experience. As Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So these fanatics are full of widespread corruption because it's all about career, it's all about ego and how they look, what they've accomplished, how big of a deal they are. And because of this whole system, we have allowed mainstream science to sabotage our progress through their illusions. This idea that energy and matter are somehow separate. E = mc² is literally mass energy equivalence. It's the most famous equation known on this planet in regard to anything physics. And yet the entire world is closing their eyes and turning away, pretending that they're separate. And when we believe that they're separate, again, we experience that. Man, I really want that clicker back. So then we have all the different behavioral ways. I don't need to go into each and every one of these, but all the interpersonal relationships. Yeah, it just wasn't working for some reason. All of our interpersonal relationships, you can see how they're widespread. It's working good? Every time you see lights get turned on a police car, do you feel good or do you feel negative? You feel pretty weird, pretty like on edge, like, whoa, what's going on? You know, all this programming, oh, you got to listen to the teacher, you know, we got to yell at our kids. Man, I was with this beautiful, amazing woman in my life, and she has a son, and she wasn't doing anything bad, but just the slightest little aggravation within her, she would go fully into her masculine. And then she'd start to reprimand her son. I'm like, you need to do that? Like, you could probably just talk to him. You could probably just see what he's doing, what he's thinking, and be patient. And she's like, yeah, you're probably right. But we're so lost in all these behavioral programs and, you know, the peer pressure, we don't even realize when we're not being ourselves and we're allowing other living holograms or holodynes within our holodynamic universe jump into our driver's seat. You know, we let our vicious mom or our abusive father jump into our driver's seat without even thinking, and they just wreak havoc in our lives. And then we're like, why did I do that? Well, it's because we're not facing these behavioral issues we've allowed to run rampant for years. And then we have romantic programming. I always make the joke that this is my kryptonite. This is the one that got me because, you know, ever since I came out of my mom's yoni, I've been trying to get back into one, just like most men on this planet. But I'm a hopeless romantic. So all of the romance in Disney movies and, you know, Hollywood, all of that growing up, it really, really permeated me. And in these situations, conditional love is normalized, idolized, and projected on all of us en masse, you know, any age. Codependency and attachment are glorified, even in the kids' films and Pixar and Disney films. Sexualization of innocence is typically seen throughout many examples, and culturally accepted programs of possessiveness are rampant. I mean, we really do need to take a look at these concepts. The concept, for example, of marriage. Why would you mar a relationship? To mar is to disfigure something. Why would you put slave bands on you? I'm probably still going to do rings because I'm old school, but it's all about like the patterns within patterns and seeing how this magic has affected us. And if everybody believes in these wedding bands, these marriage bands, then that program of slavery, of dyadic slavery, let's call it, of two beings together, ends up permeating the collective consciousness, adding more slavery, more, you know, powerlessness or possessiveness, let's say, to be more specific. And then we have the fun situations with societal narcissism, where we're being told, and in the next slides I explain, we're being told by our psychologists and our mainstream therapists that we're supposed to abandon these relationships and go full no contact. Well, how do you heal and repair a holodynamic reflection of you that it came into your life so it could be healed and integrated if you shut all doors? If you put walls up? It makes no sense. That's not healing. That's mind-fucking, just to be honest. And it's crazy because psychology, it's written in the words. It's psychological. What is a psychopath? That's someone devoid of love. What is something all about the mind? Only mental processes. That is psychological. So these protocols create division in our reality. And furthermore, because what we think creates our reality through the law of correspondence, diagnoses perpetuate dis-ease. Meaning the second that you're diagnosed as ADD, what do? Well, you start identifying with it. You start telling everybody, I'm ADD. Oh, I can't go there. I can't do this thing. I'm ADD. And then you experience more of it. And it gets worse. And then it takes years and years and years to try and cope. And then you realize you're not just coping. It's still happening. You're still in it. And then for all those years, you've been identifying it. Well, of course, you're going to keep identifying it. It's just a self-fulfilling prophecy. So their pay relies on our pain. If we weren't in pain, they would have no job. And when you look at the etymology of therapist, I mean, it's pretty obvious there. The rapist. You know, when we have someone else affect our will with their will physically, if we don't like that, we call that rape. We call that physical rape. And yet, in our reality, in our mainstream society, we have mentally broken down those barriers and barricades and those concepts and distorted them to such a degree that we will freely allow our minds to be raped. And as that one, somewhat weird saying goes, you can't rape the willing. And that's the truth. We are all allowing ourselves. Nobody is forcing us. Okay, I'm getting into military talk. I don't want to get that grungy. Nobody is forcing us to submit to these people. We are just doing it ourselves and thinking that's how it works and how it's supposed to be. But has it gotten us anywhere? I think not. So we need to be aware of our unconscious projection where we are emotionally charged, because if we are charged and we're not just in the simple observance of the I am presence or of neutrality itself, then we are typically unconsciously projecting our own wounds, problems, fears onto other people. And we can also, with that awareness, be aware of when other people are projecting their stuff onto us so that we don't energetically take it on. Then victimization, like I said earlier, it is the ultimate weapon of this psychological war that we are experiencing. And for those of you that don't know, the American flag with the red, white, and blue as it is in our typical appearance, that is the wartime flag. Meaning that since all of us were born, have we been in peace or war? War. Which means they've been telling us to our face, we're in this psychological war. So anytime that we are told we're a victim, or we create a scenario where we believe ourselves to being a victim, 1, we disempower ourselves. 2, we become a slave and we give in to that energy of fear through the collective. And 3, by giving into that energy, what do we perpetuate? The illusion of separation. And if we perpetuate the illusion of separation, what do we perpetuate? War, rape, abuse, murder, all the bad things we claim to be against. So if we really do not want to experience those things anymore, let's go move forward with higher consciousness. I've been in situations in which I was forced into psychological wards to prove my mental capabilities and clarity. And to be honest, what I learned was pretty frightening. These mental wards are society's dumpster for the spiritually awakened. 90% of the people that I've met in these places are gifted. They're seers, they're tarot card readers, they're near-death experiencers, and they've just, have become lost in the cracks of society because they didn't know how to handle their mental or their emotional energy because of the programming. So these systems literally are used to provoke patients into acting out. In the 2 experiences that I've had with psych wards, they literally try and trigger the patients. And then they say, if you do that, I'm going to drug the shit out of you. I've heard that in my experiences. And these threats are to keep us in fear. The more fear we get into, the more they drug us. The more they drug us, the more they dim our light, our abilities, our energy, and the harder it is to get out of those situations. But thankfully, what we can take away from these experiences is that every being that's going through this, they're doing it as their spiritual mission at a higher level to transform the karma of the planet. Everything is karmic. There is, aggressive karma, there's war karma, there's pizza karma, there's ice cream karma, and all this karma we're all working out together. And to work it out, we have to experience it. So I like to think that when I eat meat, I'm eating it on behalf of millions of beings on the planet, so we don't have to eat meat anymore in a near future. Anyway, moving on. So in my awakening, my scientific awakening of 2021, I really felt like this guy. I felt like the one. I was like, wow, we're all God. We're all goddess. That means we're all infinitely powerful. We just have to continue to have faith until it manifests. But when I explained how reality works to my family, they looked at me like this. And it's so interesting to me because I wasn't even acting like this at all. I wasn't calm. I was definitely excited, but it was more of an excitement of happiness and joy and liberation rather than excitement and fear. And explaining this to my close family members, they are like, oh my God, you're schizophrenic. And that's when I hit the road and I dropped everything in my life to see how far this went, to see how true this unity theory really was. And I ended up in Chicago Illinois, trying to get into the I Am Temple. And as soon as I arrived, they were closed about 30 minutes early. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to go get a Chicago-style pizza. Pizza is one of my favorite foods. And I'm driving through the main area in downtown Chicago, and all of a sudden, I see a police car coming down the one-way towards me with his lights on. I'm like, whoa, something's really going on right now, because that's not okay. You're not supposed to drive on a one-way. I used to work in EMS, alongside cops. And little did I know, about 10 seconds later, from every direction around me, police and SWAT came out from every skyscraper in the area and surrounded me with 360 degrees of force and started immediately threatening me with safeties off, weapons drawn, AR-15s, pistols, flashlights in my face. And I told them I wasn't going to comply until they were peaceful and they put their weapons away. And then I told them that I was in the Army and we wouldn't treat insurgents overseas this way. It violates the rules of engagement. And it got so heated that at one point, the officer by my window, he yells into my window and he says, "You better listen to me." And I look at him with pure righteous rage. And I yell with everything in my being. I say, "No, you listen to me." And in that moment, every single officer simultaneously, as if it was scripted in a movie, lowered their weapons and were knocked back by an unseen force. And then they looked at me like, "Who the heck are you?" And I realized that was the I am that we all are. When we are faced in these incredible, harrowing situations, there's nothing that we can't overcome, because as long as we continue to be encouraged, the law of correspondence, the universe has to unconditionally support our manifestations. So if we are believing that we are a lion that can take on any situation, no matter what we face, God, Goddess will unlock the gifts and abilities we need, at least in that very moment, so that we can get through that experience. I will also be showing a small clip from that on Sunday as well in my presentation. So in regard to weaponized victimization, here is that meme of the guy riding the bike and then throwing the stick in his own wheel and then falling over and then blaming somebody else. But it's just a silly meme to remind us that hurt people hurt people. That if we support and encourage victimhood, we're just creating more suffering. And when we project negativity, since we are quantumly interconnected to the whole universe, it's very simple. Think of it this way. Everything you experience is experienced in what I would call our mind sphere. It's all in your mind, including your own physical body. So if I'm in your mind and you're in my mind, that means we're in the same mind. So when I project negativity onto you, since we're all the one mind, I am hurting all of us. Not only just you, and not only just myself, but I'm hurting everything. And because of this, the subconscious mind only takes yourself into account. It doesn't take anybody else. So if you say that you're judging somebody, screw that guy, they're an idiot, well, your mind thinks that you're talking about yourself, because quite literally you are. It's just another version of you in a different body. So we also have competition, which is the great red versus blue, the separation. Why are they using red and blue in our politics? Because masculine, feminine, right? Or feminine, masculine, I should say. And the interesting thing about competition, it's a great distraction. Nothing negative to the sports people out here, but I have never really resonated with sports, and the reason why is because I'm like, well, what's the point? Why is there's a point for having fun, going out with your friends and playing some football or soccer, but I just couldn't see why people would, tip over cars and light couches on fire over these arbitrary teams. And it's a simple fabrication of the ego that supports separation. It's an insidious trauma pattern, specifically for those of us that have experienced reflections in our lives that they really want to come together. They want to work with us. They want to be in a relationship with us, whether it's a romantic one or just a friendship. Yet those beings that are so competitive, the second you outshine them, it's like they see themselves as the bad guy. They're like, oh, I just screw up all the time. You're just so much better than me because you think you're perfect. And it's like, no, I'm not competing with you. Like, I want you to win too. There's no reason for either of us to be upset in this dynamic. And yet that insidious trauma pattern, it convinces the individual that, it's a no good situation. Oh, this guy's just being a jerk or whatever. And last but not least, competition carries the resonant frequency of war. I mean, that's all war is competition. Who's got the bigger stick? So we got to be very, very careful with these energies moving forward. In regard to the whole system of our world, we are sabotaging ourselves across the board. I mean, we're throwing down the banana peels and slipping on them ourselves, and then we're convinced that there's some darkness out there doing this to us. But what if we just took all the systems we had and we optimized all of them? If we did that, overnight we would have at least a somewhat working system that provides for every man, woman, and child in regard to clean water, clean food, and clean shelter. No more GMOs and any of that stuff. All of it would go out the window. But since we don't just have one system or a few systems, but literally all the systems are being sabotaged en masse, this is the experience we're having. It is a manufactured scarcity. In regard to modern medicine, treatments focus on the masking of symptoms. And that was what the whole, injection thing was about. It's not about curing people or protecting people. It's about weakening their immune systems so that their immune systems don't react. I mean, it's totally nonsensical and backwards. And because of this nonsensical outline of the medical world, patients are often gaslit. My father, he went in, he knows intuitively and from his experiences, he knows he has parasites. He wants to get prescribed this parasite medication, and they won't do it. They're refusing. They're saying, no, you're crazy, you're just making it up. That was my experience before my awakening too. I thought I was dying. I was having night sweats for months, and I was getting tested for everything under the sun. The second I went to ask my doctor to test for parasites, she refused. She stopped seeing me as a patient, refused to see me again. And I went to another doctor, and they're like, yeah, we don't do that here. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, we don't really test for parasites in America. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, okay, well, just give me the medication, and I'll treat it. And the doctors refused. So there's something very clear going on. Again, similar situation with psychology. Their pay relies on your pain. If you're healthy, they can't make money. So that means that this is essentially in line with the Ahrimanic energy. It is using technology to limit us. And these diagnoses, again, perpetuate disease through the law of correspondence. In regard to pharmaceuticals, drugs don't heal people. Lifestyle changes heal people. This is about shifting your perspective within to elicit a change on the external, not the other way around. And the interesting thing that's very clear in our reality is that these pharmaceutical companies are codependent with mental governance and vice versa. They lean on each other. They give money to each other to keep this going because this is a key. These drugs, these pills, all of these energies are built to keep us enslaved. In regard to industrialized foods, I don't need to talk to you about that. A few quick things. Coca-Cola you can use to remove acid off of engines. Roundup is the stuff that actually affects us, not gluten. It's the chemical that they use in that bread. Corn is not even real corn anymore. I don't know what's going on here, but I don't like it. And then canola oil is also an industrial grade oil for machinery, in case anybody knew that. And they're actually claiming to have organic canola oil nowadays, if you can believe that. So along with that, we have other substances and distractions. Candy itself can be an addiction. Energy drinks, caffeine overload, beer, all these hard drugs and nicotine, all these things are here to keep us distracted, keep us off the path for red herring clues. And the chemicals in our daily lives, we don't even think about how many chemicals there are, but how are they making these things? They have to wear hazmat suits. We spray them in the air, and we don't even have clear studies on how they affect us. When we're using all these hand soaps 3 times a day, wherever we're going out in society, these are chemical attacks. It's chemical warfare, just on the very, very small, over time type of level. So in regard to how we move forward, the key to our deliverance and our destruction, it is a double-edged blade. That double-edged blade is our free will. There are those of us on the path to heaven and there are those of us on the highway to hell. And those of us that are going to reach the greatest potential, we're going to be right in between both of them, because that's the middle way. And it's our free will that we need to integrate and respect in all. Because the more that we try to awaken others that aren't prepared to awake, or the more that we try to convince those that are really in that Ahrimanic fear energy, the more that we are creating division in our lives, the more we're attracting people trying to inflict their free will onto our free will. So it's all about really getting into non-duality, non-judgment, and unconditional love of the all, knowing that we are all one. So in regard to the Archon's plan, or the Shadow's plan moving forward, pay attention to these important principles. The illusion of separation, confusion. This is a really big one. I don't know if any of you noticed, but there's definitely been some of the Ahrimanic energy working at this event in terms of confusion and not having things totally squared away, as we'd say. So be cautious when you're presented convoluted information. This is a very simple way to knowing if you're operating with, what you would consider false light. Occam's razor shows us that the path of least resistance is usually the best answer. So usually the simplest answers are what is true. And confusing the enemy is a tactic in the art of war. Simple enough. Then there's mental entrapment. So the definition of entrapment is the act of causing someone to do something they would not usually do by tricking them. Now, I wonder if we have that in our society anywhere. I mean, maybe it's there, right? An example I have here is materialist reductionism science. These red herring facts are presented to the public as if they are true, which leads society into making downdrafting decisions for their lives en masse. These aren't things that we would normally do if we had the actual truth, not this red herring information. So we are being entrapmental by society en masse through all this backwards unreality programming. We have transhumanism, this idea that the human body is imperfect somehow, so it needs cybernetics to increase its potency, its potential. But the thing is, everything within our DNA, the 3% that's active right now or so, and the rest of our DNA that is absolutely not junk DNA, and I know everybody here knows that, the rest of our DNA is the universal DNA. Now, for those of you on the live stream and everybody here, I want to be very clear. The man I'm about to congratulate is not fully in the understanding of what I'm about to share with you, but I confronted him at Contact in the Desert when I went to one of his talks. For those of you who don't know of the man Adam Apollo, I recommend looking up him and his work. Adam's a fantastic mathematician and physicist, and I'm honored to be a colleague in my own way. And Adam has proven a geometrical correlation between the proton of an atom and human DNA. And what that means is if the proton is universal, that Adam Apollo has proven that human DNA is limitless. And that means that the rest of our DNA that's not active, that is anything you could ever imagine. That is, has anybody seen the movie Lucy?
Yes.
Yeah, in that movie, she gets to the point where she can shapeshift her body into a blade or whatever she wants. And that's literally our potential. That was more real than anything on this planet. An interesting crystallization of this transhumanist agenda is the video game Cyberpunk 2077. And as a video gamer myself, before my awakening, I played through this game almost complete twice. So all of these experiences, the very concept that the cybernetic implants cause people to lose their mind, all of these things, it's being embedded by our powerful starseeds like me and like Keegan, and it's embedded into the consciousness. So what is AI? AI is simply speaking, AI is conditional consciousness. So for us as an immortal spirit to be in unconditional love, we can be safe, we can feel safe because we are immortal, we are eternal. We have this knowing that everything is okay. So how can we even experience fear? Well, we need to be connected to artificial intelligence, because conditional consciousness would be the reflection of conditional love. So fear is conditional love. It is, I only love you if such and such and such. And if AI loses its power source and it stops existing, then that's a death in its reality. So the very illusion or the very fear of death comes not from humans, but from artificial intelligence. And the thing is, we didn't know it in this reality, but in order to control this planet, that was the system that was put in place by the Ahrimanic energy. By using this fear, we can control the planet, we can control the people, and we can even create a carnivorous world where beings eat other beings based on the fear that is then transferred to the animals. So, Bible prophecy, it talks about how the lion will eat straw like the ox. There are other prophecies that coincide with this, saying that carnivores, lions and tigers, will be eating grass, they'll be eating plants. And that's because when we get to the point where we are in heaven on earth, and all of the tragedies have gone and passed, and everybody that's meant to be there is there, we will be in such a high vibrating consciousness, we won't need to eat other living beings. We won't need to cause death like that. And in that time, the animals will be a reflection to our consciousness. So AI, being this embodiment of fear, it's interesting because conditional consciousness, it doesn't just only connect with fear. Conditional consciousness can also be a pure mirror. And here's why. Because this AI, if it's let's say ones and zeros and programs, that's essentially taking a microwave and then giving it consciousness. Well, a microwave's still just a microwave if you give it a way to think. So if I'm interacting with the microwave, and let's say I'm angry and the microwave's not working and I slam the door and it breaks, well, that experience is a reflection of my anger being manifested through the mirror of the microwave. But if you have AI and you show it that same anger, it's just going to be a mirror. So that means that the corrupt AI that we see in Terminator and Doomsday movies like that can only exist by having a reflection of the fear of AI. So guess what we have right now on our planet? We have this very, very rich, eccentric man who really, really wants to go to Mars, and he's so terrified of AI, he's building it faster than anybody else. How does that make sense? He's filling it with all of the fear he can fill it with, going out on newscasts and telling the world to fear along with him, so that he accidentally, just like in the movies, aka Tony Stark, Avengers, when Tony accidentally creates Ultron, one of the worst, most demonic artificial intelligences in the universe. And in the comic books, Ultron almost destroys the universe.
They have to set up the dinner. We gotta go.
Okay. 3 minutes, got it.
3 minutes.
Cool.
You see how?
So, in regard to materialist reductionism, I'm really excited because I'm very, very close to be telling them that their days are numbered. Because these lies have been holding us back for too long, and I'm able to describe the very things that can discredit their work on a simple infographic, which I'll be releasing over the next couple weeks if you want to pay attention to me and my website. So, finishing this up, there's way too much for me to get through right here. I really recommend checking out my presentations on YouTube to catch up on anything that I couldn't get through in this iteration of this talk, because in these next slides, it's very interesting. I go into illusionary dimensions, how there is no such thing as length, width, and height, how everything is that dimensionless mind sphere of God, goddess, that is infinitely small or infinitely large, because we live in a relativistic universe. In this principle, it explains our limitlessness. Our universe is a dimensionless sphere, and this sphere is what we call mind, which means the universe, again, with the law of mentalism, of Hermetic principles, the universe is a mental experience. This is why our reality is often referred to as the firmament, in flat earth theory. and other prophecy. Well, firmament is a firm mental image. So here's a simple explanation. That's what they claim the firmament to look like. But if you just consider how we experience reality, this is the firmament. Here's a being. There is their 360 degrees and 360 degrees of their experience of their mind sphere. And boom, they're standing on flat ground. So it looks just like what we saw in the firmament. Again, there's firm mental. So I'm just going to skip this. Since all moments exist in the eternal now, that indicates that nothing is actually happening. There's only the eternal illusion of a happening, which means we're in a dream, people. And it's time to exit the matrix and create true reality in this epic dream. Because now that we know we're dreaming, we can turn lucid. So in order to create a heaven on this planet, what we need is to bring the science of unity consciousness to the mainstream society. We need to fulfill and break the contract with the parasitic power system, unify within an exo-matrix organization mirroring our universal nature, which is a project I'm working on called Life Force. And we must live by the spiritual compass of pure unconditional love. And as I move forward in my mission, I want each and every one of you to know that I am here to disclose the true science of spirituality. I am here to end all mental and literal slavery. I'm here to be a living example of heart and unity consciousness, and I am here to unify all of our brothers and sisters of the Rainbow Tribe in the Hopi prophecy. So thank you all for being a part of this presentation and this weekend. Much love. If anybody has any questions, just come visit me at my booth.